Hello students. Today let us discuss the concept steps involved in sampling, or which is also called sampling process. I hope the concept like meaning of sampling and methods involved in sampling, so everything clear from the last video lecture. So today we are discussing about what are the steps or process involved in sampling. So, as we all studied the meaning of sampling or sample, a sample is a part of the total population. Okay, it is a part of the total population. It can be an individual element or a group of elements selected from the population. So the question is why we take sample or why we select samples. So the simple answer, you cannot take up study on the entire population, and that's the reason we select samples and we study based on the sample unit. So sample is so please understand, sample is the representative of the population. Okay, sample represents the whole population, and it is suitable for research in terms of cost, convenience and time. This is very important. Why we take samples? First reason, we cannot take up study on the entire population, and again we have lot of benefits from taking samples, mainly the cost, convenience and time. So we also understood that sample group can be selected based on probability and non-probability approach. So the probability approach and non-probability method we discussed in the last video. So today let us see the main steps involved in sampling or process of sampling. So the very first step involved in sampling is define the target population. So this is the first step of sampling process. Define the target population. So the term target population refers to the group of individuals or objects to which researchers are interested in generalizing their findings. I repeat, the target population refers to the group of individuals or objects. It consists of a group of individuals or objects to which researchers are interested in generalizing their findings, or from which the samples might be taken. So, target population. So, in simple word, target population is a population that you wish to study. So, it is the first step of your sampling process. So first you have to decide the target population. Who are your target population? For example, the students or employees or investors or brokers or women employees. Suppose if women employees, which sector, private sector or a public sector, or the teachers, so professionals. So you have to decide your target population. So that is the first step, defining the target population. So a well defined target population or a well defined population reduces the probability of including the participants who are not suitable for the research objectives. So the participants who are not suitable for the research objective, you should not include, and that's the reason the first step, you have to clearly define your target population. So that is first step, target population. So after defining the target population, the second step, specifying the sampling frame. Sampling frame, it is a group of individuals or objects from which researcher will draw his or her sample, or in other words, it is a group of people from which you will draw your sample. Okay, sampling frame is nothing but group of people from which you will draw your sample, or it is the list of all units in the study population. Okay, list of all units in the study population from which the sample is taken is called sampling of frame. So in this step, you have to clearly specify the group of people. Okay, the group of people from which the sample is taken. Now after specifying the sampling frame, next you go for the third step, specifying the sample unit. The term sampling units mean the population units selected in the sample. I repeat, the population units selected in the sample is called sampling unit. So the sampling units, it could be geographical, for example, region or districts or cities, wards, etc. So these are called the sampling units. Next point, selection of the sampling method. After specifying the sampling unit, next you go for selection of the sampling method. So there are several methods of selecting population units. Okay, so to be included in the sample. So sampling can be done through probability or non-probability methods or techniques that you studied in the last video. So there are two methods, sampling methods, that is probability method or non-probability method. So you have to decide, so which method is suitable for your study, whether probability method or non-probability method. So in this step you have to take decision about the selection of sampling method, whether you go for probability method or non-probability method. So based on your study, the purpose of study, finally you take the decision of the method of sampling. So in other words, the way in which the sample units are to be selected. So method means the way in which sample units are selected, the way you select the sample unit. Okay, you need sample units. The way in which you select the sample units are called sampling methods. So the choice of the sampling method, which method is good? The choice of the sampling method, okay, it is influenced by the objectives of the business research, availability of financial resources, time constraints, nature of the problem to be investigated. So all these points are taken into account. All these points ultimately affect your choice of sampling method. So in the fourth step, you have to take decision about the method of sampling. Now after deciding about the method of sampling, next you go for the next step, that is determination of sample size. So the sample size is simply the number of units in the sample. Okay, sample size means number of units that you include in the sample. So that is, number of units in the sample is called as sample size. That means number of units that you include in your sample, that is called sampling or sample size. So sample size determination depends on many factors. There are factors which affect the sample size. So for example, time, cost, facility, etc. So all these points taken into account while deciding about sampling size. The time, cost factor, facility factor, everything taken into account while taking decision about the sampling size or sample size. So in general, larger samples are better, but they also require more resources. Now after determination of sample size, which means the number of units in the sample, after deciding the number of units in the sample or sample size, next you specify the sampling plan. In this step, the specifications and decisions regarding the implementation of the research process are outlined. Okay, so specifying the sampling plan, you need to specify clearly your sampling plan. Okay, so that is after the sample size, after deciding the number of units in the sample, next you specify the sample plan. Okay, so decision regarding the implementation of the research process. Okay, now after this, the last step is selecting, and finally you select the plan. After specifying the sampling plan, finally you select the sample. So this is actually the final step in the sampling process, where the actual selection of the sample elements is carried out. Okay, here actual selection of the sample elements is made. So this step involves implementing the sampling plan. Okay, you implement the sampling plan to select the sample required for the study. First you specify the sampling plan, which is your sampling plan. You clearly specify, you take decision in the sixth step, you take decision about the sampling plan. So that is the point to specifying the sampling plan. Now after specifying the sampling plan, which means you are taking decision about the sampling plan. So that is specifying the sampling plan. So after specifying, you finally take the finally implement. Okay, that is what selecting the sample. So first you define your target population. After defining the target population, whether your target population is students, or you are going to study on the teachers, or you are going to study on private employees, or government employees, your target population. Okay, first you clearly define the target population, and after defining the target population, next you specify the sampling frame. After taking decision about the sampling frame, you decide about sampling units. And next take decision about the sampling method, the probability method or non-probability method. And after taking decision about the method of sampling, next you decide about the sample size, that is the number of units in the sample. And next you specify the plan, clearly decide, take decision about the sampling plan. And next finally you implement the sample. So that is selecting the sample. So I hope you understood the concept, process or steps involved in sampling. Thank you.